Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Jay and Mike Syrylo. What's up, gentlemen?
How's it going? It's been a couple of years since I've been on this one.
Yeah. Sounds about right. Mike, of course, is from Legion 99.
Yeah.
Also the TO for Invader League.
Unfortunately.
I think you've done a great job, so I would say fortunately.
It's cut into my sleep quite a bit, so it's a double-edged sword.
Well, that's fair.
Turns out 18 different time zones is a bear to work with.
Yeah, I have a bone to pick with you, but we'll save that for a little bit later in the cast.
All right. Yeah, so we are going to talk about Invader League today. We have some news updates, which we will talk about.
Yep.
And some forum rulings on some stuff that we talked about last week. So we'll talk about those also. Let's get right into it. You got some housekeeping for us, Jay?
Yeah, so for housekeeping, let's start with, like we always start with, Patreon. You know, if you like the podcast or the blog or anything that we do from a content perspective, come support us on Patreon. We are going to be last quarter, we gave away all the Battle Force cards to our Patreon members at the $10 and $25 level. We're going to do that again this quarter. Plus, those of you that already got the Battle Force cards, we'll give you something else. But all you new Patreon members at the $10 and $25 level will be getting Battle Force cards. We're going to start sending out some of the errata cards as well to our Patreon members at those levels. And then, you know, just if you want to just come support us, we have lower tiers like $1 tier, $2 tier. If you want to just support us, we really love the support. It helps us keep the blog writers warm during the winter. And it just in general keeps Kyle happy when Patreon members are signing up. So if you want Kyle to be happy on this cast, come join us on Patreon. And if you have already joined us, thank you. We've had a ton of you sign up lately, and that's been great. So thank you so much for signing up. And if you sign up right now, if you stop listening, just pause it for a second. If you sign up this Wednesday, which will be tomorrow for you, we're doing a live Q&A, so you can come ask us questions live on our Patreon, and I don't know, ask Kyle what he really thinks about Mike Syrylo on our Q&A on our Patreon.
I'm sure I've heard it already.
Yeah. And then the second thing that's pretty cool is in October we're starting season 3 of Stormtide. So if you haven't joined Stormtide yet, or you don't know what it is, it's our monthly narrative campaign that's based on the Legion rule set that we release new units, new cards, missions, all kinds of stuff, and you kind of follow along a narrative. We actually came up with this cool mechanic that if you wanted to start in season 3, you don't have to buy season 1 or 2. You could just start in October for the monthly campaign, and we'll catch you up with what's happened in the story so far through this cool mechanic. I don't want to give it away, but you can sign up now. And then if you're already a Stormtide member, you just keep going with your subscription. But yeah, so if you want to join, if you've been thinking about it, if you've been tossing and turning about it at night, October is a great month to start. That'll be season 3. And if you don't know what it is, or you don't know, what to think about it, you can go to the Legion Discord. We have our own Stormtide channel, so you can ask people there. There's a bunch of people on there that play and interact and talk about the game in the narrative, and so you can go on there and get everybody's feedback on it. So yeah, that's it. That's all I'll do for housekeeping this week, Kyle.
Awesome. All right, let's jump right into news then.
All right, so news. So big one. The Blizzard Force Battle Force has been delayed. It was supposed to be out actually this week, this Friday, with Echo Base, and it has a TBD delivery date now. So my understanding is that it may be a quality control issue, but obviously that They probably should have done that for all of them, but whatever. Here we are. And so that's been pulled from the release schedule. And then secondly, we found out recently some forum updates. So I'll take one and then I'll give you guys the other one since you guys were talking about it. So Din Djarin's the rifle that has all been qualified what we thought it would do. So if you listen to any of the Scoundrels recently where we talked about Din's rifle and how it would work in a game of Legion, we were right on the money. And so that's been confirmed in the forums. And then Kyle's sneezing. So maybe Mike, what was the other forum ruling?
Sure. So the other forum ruling was a correction on a forum ruling that they had already put out about IG-88 and his 1-pip focused on the kill. So now IG-88 does not suffer extra wounds beyond his 5 threshold. And no matter, once he hits that threshold of 5 wounds, at the end of that turn, regardless of how many wounds he's left with, he's removed from play and defeated because his wound threshold has been met. So even if you would repair him like 5 times, for example, and he's got 0 wounds, because he's hit that 5 threshold, he's removed at the end of the turn. Which is a little bit of an update to the forum ruling they posted last week and that we just published on our cast yesterday.
Perfect.
They also put out a forum clarification that the dice in the 501st box for the ARC troopers and the ATRT are misprints. And they're not errata. So the arcs are not red, and the laser cannon was not nerfed to black.
Perfect.
I'm glad.
Shocking.
I'm glad that they at least like put something out there because there were lots of people, understandably, being like, "Oh, look, they buffed arcs," and then amusingly, you follow the thread in those posts, and then people are like, "But why did they nerf the Archie laser?" So I'm glad
It's the
they cleared
internal
that up.
AMG meta.
Yeah. I'm glad they cleared that up.
Yeah.
Interesting that I guess the other misprints are things like crit to block. So, they don't need to clear that up because that's obviously not a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. Is that it? Is that it for news? And then we can talk about the news. But as far as
I think so. Just one other thing, Mike, where can everybody find your podcast?
Yeah, so we're Legion 99. We can be found on Spotify, YouTube, just about everywhere that you find your podcast at this point. We're also like quasi partnered with 6 Up Supply. Keegan's part of our podcast and has that shop as well. And Nick, who's one of our co-hosts, is the TO for PAX Unplugged, which I think you guys have an affiliation with now.
Well, yeah, technically, yeah, we do. So we are basically the major sponsor of the PAX Unplugged event, and kind of it's running under our banner, which is pretty cool. And Nick's going to be TOing it, so it's going to be an amazing event with amazing terrain because he never puts out a bad table, I don't think so.
Yeah. He just printed 2 more, so I'm excited to see them get their debut for PAX.
It's good.
Just showing the pictures yesterday. No. It only stops when the printer breaks.
Yeah. I asked him at ACO, I'm like, how many tables do you have? And it didn't even like take him at he didn't have to think about it. He was like 26. And I'm like, you have 26 tables like that? Like one person has 26 tables.
Yeah.
That's insane. And they're all like amazing looking too.
I always thought I was the big man with the 10. And then, when he said 26, I was like, oh, well, oh man, I've been really slacking.
Yeah, he donated 6 of them to the LTC circuit, and I think he's printed and painted 4 since then, so he's still at like 24, which is just actually at 25 because I just gave him one of mine. So he's quickly going back up the ranks.
There you go.
So
Gotta get up to 30.
I think he's trying to get to 32 so that he can do everyone for PAX.
I tell you what,
64.
You tell him when he gets to 32, he can come on the Scoundrels and talk all about it, but only when he gets to 32.
It's a high bar.
All right, you'll listen to him in 3 months.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about these news items real quick, and then we can dive into Invader League. Blizzard Force.
Yep.
There must be something that we don't know, because at least the Blizzard Forces that have been coming out in Canada and Europe, there were definitely misprints on those and or missing tokens, but it seemed less significant than the ones from the other boxes anyway. it was like there was like one vehicle damage token instead of the one of each type. In the German version, Vader had crit to block, and the German force choke had like you can't use it on core instead of you can't use it on commanders. So like more obvious stuff. And I think the Canadian one was just the vehicle damage token. I'm struggling to see like why they would pull this one and not do anything with the other ones that are actually like straight up missing plastic and like essential tokens that you need. I don't know. It's a little odd.
I heard a rumor. I'm not gonna say exactly what I heard, but I heard a rumor that all the cards dice were misprinted to something else. And so I don't know I don't have proof on that. It's just a rumor that I heard. But in my head, there's two reasons you do this. One, either this one has significant issues that the US one that is above and beyond what we've already seen that they've already let go, or number two, someone high up got wind of all the mistakes and everything and was like, okay, we're pulling the plug. And maybe Blizzard Force was just the one that they didn't sell as many of or something, you know what I mean? Because I don't have any other reason. It's either significant issues or there's a reason why they selected that one, because Echo Base and Blizzard are coming out at the same time. So you could have just pulled both of them since they're both at the same the same I mean, listen, Echo Base has some weird stuff in it. Like
it has some issues too.
Like 4 vets and 4 MKs, which I know we talked about, hey, it's okay to have 4 vets, but you never need 4 MKs. Like or you can't even have 4 MKs, let alone need it.
I mean, extra product seems like, sort of an opposite. And I think that's also what it said on the box. So at least you're getting what it says in the box. It is weird. I think more concretely with Echo Base, they also had some missing tokens. There was like not enough command tokens, stuff like that. So
okay, so let me just argue this for you, Kyle. Here's why, even though it's more content, more product, why it's bad is because you can never field all 8 of those units. And if a new player doesn't know that and tries to field all 8 of those because they came in the starter box, which is supposed to be a starter army for me to go play at my local store, it's going to get confusing, and it's just feels bad at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's an odd decision to put 4 of each in there instead of 3.
We're just, I know we already kind of, I'm still not happy about it.
Well, and I think, I mean, we're still, at the end of the day, we're still speculating. Like we know that they pulled Blizzard Force. We don't know why. They haven't said anything about any of the other issues for the other ones, except that the 501st ones are misprints. Right. They've done like basically what they have to so that people can actually like use the cards without getting confused. But I haven't heard of them like sending people shield token. I mean, if you're listening and like you've had a different, like you bought one of these boxes and you've had a different experience, let me know. But I haven't heard of them like sending people shield tokens or sending people flight stands or anything that we're missing from the boxes. So
no, like, that hasn't popped up yet.
Yeah. So and they haven't said anything about any of that stuff publicly. So I don't know. Wherefore thou battle force. We said enough about it last week, and unfortunately we're still in the same position because they haven't told us anything. So it'd be nice if they at least came out and said like this does not meet our quality standard. Like we'll fix this.
Or at a minimum, because this costs nothing, saying we know they're messed up. We're sorry. We're working on some sort of fix. Like it doesn't have to be. You don't have to commit to anything. You just say, we're working on an answer. And that could be as simple as like printer play, or, it doesn't have to be complex, but just like, we're working on it. It's like, hello, anybody work there? Is anybody there?
Yeah. Like right now, the message of silence is essentially like, yeah, this is an okay quality standard for us.
Right. We're fine with everything that's going on.
Yep. That's what silence means. So anyway,
But at least we got a forums update.
Yep. Yeah, should we talk about this real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the Amban, there's not really much to talk about except that, you know, for those that have not seen the post, you should actually look at it because, like, I think it might be like the most articulate, thorough rules question I've ever seen asked on the forums. Now, granted, it's for a complicated thing. Like the rules post or the question is like a page and a half long because the Amban is what it is. But you know, the guy goes through like all the scenarios and like, is this how that works in this scenario? Is this how it works in this scenario? And is like exceedingly specific. It's really good. But yeah, it's, you know, Grogu can target something with it. Like you can shoot into a closed transport. You can target into melee.
Yep.
You know,
yeah,
all the things.
Yeah.
All the things we talked about.
I'd like to say something about this.
Okay.
So a listener messaged me and asked me or said that they didn't think that this was game breaking and that why do we think it's game breaking? And so I'd like to like qualify or clarify this is that and Kyle, you could speak for yourself, and Mike, you don't have to say anything. We'll take the bullet. I'd like to say, I don't think this particular item is game breaking. I think it is something that individually is unique that we haven't seen before and could potentially lead. If we start seeing more stuff like this that plays outside the general rules of the game and how the game is generally played overall, that it could lead to game breaking stuff if normal like rules are ignored of how we understand them. That's my take.
I'm kind of in the same camp. Honestly, it's a position that I've put out there before that this upgrade in and of itself, while very strong in specific scenarios, doesn't, tilt the game immediately because there's still an opportunity cost and it's still an expensive piece, but it creates a design space that breaks 17 fundamental rules of Legion. So it's very possible that we haven't even discovered all of the sidebar options that it has and different weird interactions. But then B, it's also just another layer of complexity that with new units coming out and new command cards and new effects, that creates another chain of events that all of a sudden leads to a loophole that probably shouldn't be there and realistically could be cleaned up with cleaner text.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like, it would have been really easy to just word it in a way that it was so much cleaner and still have it do all of the same things, except, break the things that it can, like do the things like hitting hidden models and having Grogu target it and stuff that to me, I can't imagine they intended that to be like a thing for this when they designed it. And it, like, you could have avoided all that and still had it do auto wounds, still had it ignore all the defensive keywords, still have it ignore Guardian. Like you could have still have it be 2 actions, still give them the speed 1 move, like all of those things, and with just like slightly cleaner wording, and it would not have been difficult. So I think that's my primary issue with it. It's not so much that it's like a balance concern. I'm not convinced one way or the other on that front. It's just mechanically sloppy in a way that's like completely unnecessary. And they've said that, they said on stream that this was the first card designed with the quote AMG design philosophy. So, yeah.
Shaggy.
Yeah, I don't know why they felt like they had to like not use the existing very successful, very easy to use mold that was there. But anyway, yeah, that's the Amban. We've talked enough about the Amban. Should we talk real quick about IG88?
Yeah.
So there have essentially been like 3 different interpretations of this, right? The I think the closest to rules as written is what we discussed last week before there was a forum ruling, which is the he can only suffer 5 wounds, and then if he has less than 5 wounds during the end phase, he doesn't die, which means that you could just repair him for 1 wound at the end of the turn and he would still live, which is obviously dumb from a balance perspective.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't go with that, even though I think arguably that's like the most the closest to what it says on the card. And then the original ruling was that he can exceed his wound threshold, which means you could overwound him. So that's clearly better from a player agency perspective, because it means you can shoot him more, and then he has a greater chance of dying at the end of the turn. I think it would have been fine if they just stuck with that. From a balance perspective, they ended up going to this, like, he essentially enters like a doomed state once he hits 5 wounds, and there's no reason to repair him or anything. Certainly from a balance perspective, the least abusable, which I guess is probably why they went with this. The flip-flopping is kind of weird. That, I mean, I know that rulings change, whatever, that's fine. But clearly this card could have been worded more cleanly if there's like multiple different interpretations, and they ultimately decided on this one. I'm glad this is where we ended up from a balance perspective. IG88 plus Dell and a bunch of repair bots could have been silly.
Probably wouldn't have even been a bad list, honestly. Just turn Boba and IG88, you get like 2 free repair bots anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I made a list the other day. It was both IGs, item, Inferno, 3 Storm T21s, one of which had a repair bot, 2 snipers and Inferno, and it was like, I think that was 11 activations, might have been 10, I don't remember. And a generic officer, because you need allies of convenience in there to do that. And it's like a really good list, and it also has repair in there, so I think it could still be really good, just not in a way that like dumbly abuses the cannot be killed state. So
yeah.
So I'm glad this is where they landed.
So basically, so that everyone understands, including myself, once he reaches 5, you basically just stop counting, and you're just like, yeah, he's gonna die, and you can't heal it off, you can't repair it. It doesn't matter if he goes over it, because he's just doomed at the end of at the end of it anyways.
Yep. Yep. If he ever gets to 5 during a turn, there's nothing you can do. He will die at the start of the end phase.
Okay.
But not before. So.
Right.
Yep. Which is still real. I mean, this is essentially, it means like assuming he doesn't go first and then you kill him after that. Like he's essentially guaranteed 1 action. Yeah. After he would otherwise die. 1 turn, whatever.
And when you've got 6 dice, Pierce, and Sharpshooter 1, that's a pretty effective action.
Yeah. Or he could use it to grab an objective or something, grab a box with him and play this card.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's right. You could there's so much you could do, knowing that you could play that card the next turn. You could have a box at the end of the first turn and have them in the wide open, and it just doesn't matter, right? Because you're just I'll just leave them there till the end, and then I'll just run them straight towards my
it's like the guess I'll die meme. Just the old guy sitting there with the box.
Yeah. I mean, clearly you can do other stuff in that scenario. You can engage him in melee to prevent him from running away. You can force push him, whatever. But killing him, not an option. So, I dig this card. I'm glad this is where they ended up eventually. All right. Hey, he's still not out yet, so I get anyway. If they land somewhere, solidly land somewhere before he's released, then that's good.
Yeah.
Shall we talk about Invader League?
Let's do it.
Yeah, Mike.
All right. So
what is Invader League? Should we start there?
So as I say, that's probably a good place to start. Yeah. You guys have way more listeners than people that actually play in the league, so there's probably not a huge crossover there. But the Invader League is an international tabletop simulator Legion tournament. It's been going on for 9 seasons. We're currently in Invader League season 9. And basically, it's a group of currently 198 players from all over the country in, I think, 18 different time zones, I figured out, that play a giant Legion tournament. We have players sign up. They get distributed into groups of 6 based on their region. And then you play 6 round robin games, and the top 2 from everybody's group advance and play a single elimination bracket in varying formats. Then eventually, over the course of like 2.5 months from the start, we have a grand champion, which I think Kyle has won one time.
Once.
Once.
Yeah, the only person to have done it twice is Kingsley.
Yeah, that's true.
That I'm aware of. Otherwise, it's been somebody different every time.
I look forward to Bobette, who is our current season 8 champion, getting season 9 as well. But I think he's got to get through your group first.
He does. Yeah, we're in the same group.
He's off to a pretty belligerent start. So
yeah, I mean, he's a great player. Obviously, he won last year. He passed me on the ELO for Invader, so he is. I'm now number 2, and he's now number 1. Yeah. And we both got put in the same group. So
I swear the button is random.
I believe you. And I remember you saying, you're like, man, group 12 NA East, that's a brutal one. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm in group 12. Seems like destiny. And yeah.
So all right, here's my bone I have to pick with you, Mike, and it's entirely not your fault. I was so happy when we moved to the time zone, like specific groups, right? I was like, oh yeah, East Coast, this is great. I'm tired of playing people on the West Coast or, all over the world, like saying, hey, I could play at like midnight, my time. And so last Invader League was great. Like everybody wanted to play at reasonable times, but I'm in a group. And like the first messages about everybody's schedule, everyone's like, I could start at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'm like, dude, what? Like, we're gonna be playing till past midnight? I'm like, on a work night? Like, guys, I got school in the morning. I can't be playing games till midnight.
That's a little bit of an exception there. Most of the Eastern groups start their games around like 6 to 8:30. That's unfortunate.
Yeah,
I mean, look, I'm guilty. That is me. I'm the one that wants to play at 9 o'clock.
No wonder you have such a good record.
I hate you so much. Every week I tell Kyle how much I hate him. Like usually 9 o'clock again.
Yeah. We record at 9 o'clock. I mean, that's because like my kids go to bed.
Yeah.
And it helps a lot if I can wait until after they're in bed before I do evening activities, so that my wife's not trying to wrangle 3 kids for bedtime, screaming in the background while I'm unavailable doing not just a computer game, but a board game of miniatures on the computer. It's like one extra level of like, do you really have to be doing this right now? So, yeah, guilty. I'm the one that wants to start at 9. I'm sorry, Jay.
To what Jay is alluding to, starting last year, we did a little bit of breakup. So we have 4 regions for round robin, which is North America, East and West, Europe, and then Australia/Pacific. It changes every year. I forget what it's called right now. And then everyone goes to a regional elims. So for this season, we have the same 4 regional groups. But when you go, the top 2 will all advance to their what we call regional bracket. So the top 2 from every pod in North America East will play a single eliminations tournament, West, etc. But this season we combined Europe and Australia into one world bracket because the Australian bracket is not large enough to support a single elims after its round robin. And then the top 4 from each of those brackets will meet in what we call grand finals. And that's kind of just a time zone clash to see who's the best. So we'll see how it goes this time. But I've been involved for a long time. I was a judge way back in season 3, became head judge in season 6, and graduated to TO for season 8 and 9 now. So I think I've been involved with as many seasons as LJ is at this point, because he took a little break, even though he started it.
Yep.
Just terrifying.
Zach for a season or 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say my favorite thing to come out of the regional groupings, besides the scheduling, which has been great, is kind of like the regional rivalries. You have like, East players being like, East players are the best, East Coast, Beast Coast, and the West Coast players are like West Coast, Best Coast. And then of course you have the Europe and Asian players being like, no, you're all crazy. It's, Europe or Asia. So it's funny to see like the cross regional trash talking about, which regional group is the best.
We wanted to foster a sense of rivalry both internationally and locally, because it's really cool when you have a couple players that, like, for example, you and I are only like 3 hours apart, but we don't play in a lot of the same tournaments. So if you've got the best players from the, say, Boston or Philly area playing the best guys in DC, it's cool to get some like local rivalries. And then you also have the international and the coast to coast talk. So it's been a smashing success on all accounts there. So I'm excited to keep that going.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think honestly, I was teasing you there a little bit about this year, but that's the best thing you guys could have ever done, because before that I just hated Invader League because of the scheduling. And once you guys did that, I was like, oh, this is great. And now I signed up again this year. I've only played this only my third year playing or something, or so it's good. It's good.
Yeah, I'm actually playing NTOing this season, so I kind of like stepped back from. I'm technically a judge, but I'm not making any judge calls. I know.
I see.
I actually have Mike in my group.
Yeah.
And somebody asked you like a rules question or something, and you had to be like, reminder, the judge for this group is not me.
Yeah, I was like, please send all questions to Kyle.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to abstain, or I have to abstain from all decisions here.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. What are you running, Mike?
So I'm actually running a Control-C, Control-V version of your Nova list with a tweaked battle deck. Because as our listeners may have heard, I don't play a lot anymore. I don't have a lot of time. So I really don't have many reps. So getting to watch you play 7 games and then playing 4 of myself, I think Legion is pretty easy to watch and learn. You don't necessarily have to play it yourself. If you see other competent players do something, it's pretty easy to pick up. So getting like 11 reps out of that, I thought was pretty easy to do. And it's a super strong list that fits the meta. And it's fun. So triple whammy. Though it's kind of a list that we're going to see a lot of, because as you guys were nice enough to do, I sent over all the list URLs, and we have a breakdown of all the list data. And as you may be surprised to learn, there's a lot of Boba Fett and a lot of Iden. And it's not just for me. It's like all over the freaking league.
I was really surprised. Yeah. Sorry, guys. I don't think that's even like my fault uniquely.
No.
But I think so.
Okay. Let me open this up, because I was really surprised at some of these numbers. Just like I expected a lot of Iden, I expected a lot of Den, I expected a lot of Bubba, but just like the sheer quantity. Why don't we you want to walk through these, Mike?
Yeah, so if you want to see the numbers that we're talking about, you can head over to legionstats.thefifthtrooper.com. I think it's tournament 70. It should say Invader League Season 9 round robin. So all that stuff is here.
Yeah, props, by the way, to Bushman and our data whiz, Dr. Power Slam, on getting all that stuff in there so quickly.
So I think we could start with the faction counts, because it's actually pretty balanced, and I was pretty surprised by this. So we have 109.
Hang on.
Okay.
No, it is not, but I will let you go ahead and talk about that.
It's kind of balanced.
No, it's not.
It's not like it's not equally balanced. It's like shaded to eras. So we have 198 players. We have 59 Imperials. That's a lot. We have 59 Rebels, 33 Separatists, 29 Gar, and only 18 Shadow Collective. So I mean, they're balanced across the era. It's just a rapidly descending amount as you go across the eras.
Mm-hmm.
Rapidly descending. Yeah, there are twice as many Empire and Rebel players as there are Droid and Republic players,
which is insanity.
Yeah, I mean, it's not rocket science in that, like, Empire and Rebels. So it's worth noting that Invader League is not necessarily the same timeline as release schedule. So essentially it can be, it's not always, but it can be like everything that's previewed. So Invader League also has legal all of Boba's cards, all 6 of his command cards, Rebel Boba Fett.
Would you like me to pull up the list?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, because I'm not going to do this as well from memory.
No problem. I have looked at this a lot. So we have added in new units. One of our traditions that separates Invader League, besides the fact that it's on TTS, is that we've added in things that have been previewed and that we have official cards for. So for example, for this season, we have all 6 Boba Fett cards legal. We have the Rebel Boba. We have Din in with all of his cards now that he's been fully spoiled. So all of his upgrades, all his command cards, Grogu's command card. IG-88 just with his unit card is legal. IG-11 is legal. Clone Commander Cody is actually in. He's available here. There's no command cards, but you can still use his unit card. Crucially, with his expansion, Waxer and Boyle, the Clone Trooper personnel upgrades are legal, and Dark Troopers are in. But if you're taking Dark Troopers, you can only take the naked unit of Dark Troopers. I'm pretty comfortable adding in new units that have been spoiled, but I really don't like to homebrew rules. I don't like to make up like personnel rulings and things. So we just went with the straight card. And we were pretty clear about that from the start. It's been about a month and a half public knowledge that if you're taking these guys, you're sadistic and you're only playing them naked.
Yeah, and some people did take the Dark Troopers.
We got 2.
Yeah. But a lot more people took Din and Boba.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sure did.
Yeah, and anyway, where I was going with that observation is that Empire and Rebels are getting all the new hotness. So it kind of makes sense that, like, I mean, Republic's not getting a release probably until Cody. It doesn't seem like droids are getting one until Ventress, right?
I think that's the latest spoil that we have.
Yeah.
It's basically just a name.
Yeah.
Right. Meanwhile, we just got all these bounty hunters. I guess droids got Bosk in the Shadow Collective wave, which isn't nothing. Bosk is great. But
we're seeing a lot of Bosk.
Yeah. Boosk. But Empire's getting all the bounty hunters basically. Are there any bounty hunters that Empire can't take that have come out so far or will be coming out?
No, they have access to all of them.
Okay, so yeah, that's both
as
IGs.
they should.
That's done. I mean, yeah, that's their thing. I get that, and I'm sure that there's some, like, the recent shows have focused on this era and they focused a lot on bounty hunters, so like it makes sense. But it's not rocket science when you look at these faction counts. Like Empire and Rebels just have more stuff to pick from, and that stuff is newer. So it's both exciting and also, so it would seem so far, very good. So I was a little bit surprised by the lack of Shadow Collective. I guess that could be because I feel like, I know they only came out 3 months ago, but I feel like Shadow Collective is kind of like, solved is not the right word, but people know. I don't know if that's the right word either. People know what is good with Shadow Collective, and it is very good. But at this point, it's kind of like, it is what it is. You know what it does. For me, I was waffling amongst many things, but one of them was between like Maul Pikes and Blizzard Force. And like I already, I haven't run Maul Pikes in a tournament, but I've seen other people run it, and it's very similar to lists that I've run in the past with a Force user and a bunch of core units with heavies. I've played Maul a lot. I know what he does. So like, well, I think that is a very strong list. And, if I was going to like a tournament where all I cared about was outcomes tomorrow, there'd probably be a good chance that I was bringing that. But I kind of wanted to see what Blizzard Force did because I'm not like a super experienced speeder player. I've run like T47s and Staps and stuff, but I felt like between the two, I needed to experience Blizzard Force more for myself, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of people probably feel the same about Shadow Collective versus some of the new hotness like Din and Boba and stuff like that. So, new Boba with all his new cards.
One of the other, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, in round robin, you see a lot of people experimenting. So
yeah,
that's what I was kind of going to get into. Round robin does have a lot of experimentation historically, and Legion and Invader specifically has a stigma. I'm going to say problem because I can't think of a better word, but it has a stigma identity that when a list gets to be really good and it's known meta, like people tend to not want to be labeled as that tryhard. I think we have a glaring exception with Rexstar because there was just literally no counter to it for 2 seasons. But for the most part, if you look at like your Magna Spiders from the past couple of months, I know both of our casts talked about like, why aren't these things showing up at tournaments, like on real life boards where they'd be real good? And people are like, I just didn't want to bring it. And from some of the players that I've talked to who have run Shadow Collective and have switched to other things here, that's kind of come back into play that, I've played this, I'm tired of it. I don't want to be that guy. So I'm going to do something else that I still think is very good, but it just looks a little more fun.
I think the big thing too, and like along those lines, is most of the people who would bring, let's call it a try hard list, like most of the people that would bring a try hard list already probably have their world invite. And so like in the real world, right, like they're not bringing lists that are going to be like really good. Like even, Kyle's a great player, and he's been bringing a different list like to almost every tournament just to see how things are playing, and all right, well, I don't know, I think this might be good, let me bring this, and just because really, if Kyle loses a tournament, it looks bad on his elo ranking and I flog him on the podcast, but other than that, like, it's there's nothing really on the line right now because most hundreds of people already have worlds invites, so everyone's just playing now, which is great, which is making it the Wild West of Legion, and you're seeing all kinds of crazy stuff being played.
We'll talk about how many like acts and what kind of bids we saw.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, this is the most even we've ever seen the average activations. It's 10.2, which is not super surprising.
Yep. 10 seems to be the magic number.
But Empire is averaging 10.3, Rebels 10.3, GAR 9.4, and CIS 10.5, which is pretty shocking to see three like almost essentially at the exact same level. And to see GAR over 9 and almost to 9.5 is the highest we've ever seen that. Have any ideas as to why we might be seeing that? So I have one.
I have two.
All right.
Barks,
I don't have
Barks
any.
and Pikes.
This is new information.
I think it's the Pike situation. There's a cheap filler that's effective for all four factions, because we're also seeing a heavy number of like Jedi heroes and stuff. It's not like everything is just spamming units.
So I should caveat. So there's one caveat to that. As a, I guess I can't call myself a Republic player because at this point it's, if anything, it's Empire, but it's really all four. But the Pikes are the best version of the Pikes, particularly in Republic, is the 80-point version with the capo upgrade and the disruptor. So it's not necessarily that they're cheap. It's just that they're kind of cheaper than your alternatives. And then, of course, you have the capo commanders. The capo commander is 15 points cheaper than the clone commander. So if you're taking Pikes, you're taking the capo commander, and that's like a big savings over your clone commander. So that's 15 points right there. But then if you're taking Pikes, that's a courage 2 unit. In order to get like a unit with courage mitigation for a Republic, you have to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 points, like 90 to 94 points roughly, for either a phase 1 with a heavy weapon and a captain or a phase 2. So well, it's like slightly more expensive than a phase 1 with naked phase 1 with the Z6, which would be 75. You're probably not running a lot of those anyway, so it kind of takes like the the successful Republic list archetype where you're running some mix of units that have some resistance to suppression that are like in that 90-point range, and you're getting a discount from those down to 80, and then you're getting a discount from your clone commander from 60 down to 45. So it's kind of like adding up at the margins, if that makes sense. Like I mean, maybe people are doing this. I wouldn't do this, but I don't think it's because people are taking like 40-point Pike units as filler, especially because they don't actually count toward their minimums anyway.
Yeah,
so
we'll talk about that because I have the numbers for exactly how many of those showed up too.
Okay. I don't think that's why Republic is getting the 10 activations. I know people were speculating about that. I don't actually think that's good in Republic, but I think you can still sort of use Pikes to save points, even if you're taking the 80-point version of Pikes.
I'm just happy to see that I am exceeding the average the average on this activations. I'm running 12.
I'm very
Exceeding
happy at 11.
expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm only at 10 with my Vader bikes Blizzard Force. We'll see how that goes, bikes with 10 activations, but
The bids are more surprising to me because it's only a 5.4 average.
so it's
Another
interesting.
positive thing for me. Mine's 12.
And I think there's a reason for that. And it's funny because after all the red blue changes, I feel like we're kind of back where we were, like 18 months ago, where the average bid was around 5.
Yeah.
You have lists like the speeder lists that are bidding like 12 to 15 points, and then you have lists that aren't speeder lists that are like, well, I could try and bid like 17 to 20 points and outbid those speeder lists, or I could just not bid. And that's kind of the approach I went with for Nova. Because when you're making for whatever reason, it feels like when you're making a speeder list, you can actually, like, you have the points to throw around where you can be like, yeah, I want to use my objectives. I want to use my deployments for these speeders. Whereas if, I guess you could call it a gun line, the Iden Bobo list that I ran for Nova. If you're running that, I didn't feel like I could find 12 to 15 to 20 points without cutting an activation. And if I wasn't going to be able to find 12 to 15 points, then why bother? Like if you're losing the bid to speeder lists, you're going to lose it by a lot anyway. And if you're bidding a couple points, maybe you can outbid some other gun lines, but maybe not. And as long as you build a list that kind of doesn't care, which I think the Iden Bubble list doesn't really care, then you might as well not bid. So I think I'd be more interested than an average. I'd be more interested to see like a distribution. Like, are people really bidding 5 to 6 points, or do you have like a bunch of people bidding like 12 points and then a bunch of other people bidding 2 points? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Trying to see if the website has that actually.
Okay.
It has a first quartile, median, and third, which I'll admit I don't know what they mean, but I have the numbers.
Okay.
I know what the mean is, but I don't know what the first and third quartiles are. So if you would like to enlighten me, I can tell you what that is.
I don't actually know either, because I don't know how it pulls those specifically.
No. Okay.
So sorry. That'll be a question for Bushman or Dr. Power Slam. But yeah, I suspect that this average is slightly misleading, in that you have lists like speeder lists that are bidding a lot, and then you have the other lists that are like, well, I can't outbid a speeder list, so I might as well not do it.
Yeah.
That's my sense. I mean, this is round robin, where you have 200 people of extremely varying experience levels. So I think things like bids will probably be a little more meaningful once you get to regional elims.
Mm-hmm.
But
I was surprised to see that CIS is not the highest bidder. It's actually Empire per average, but I'd imagine that comes in with the Blizzard Force list with the speeders and some of your double bounty ideas.
It's not just that. I mean, Empire has a lot of good stuff that's cheap.
That's fair.
Empire, now don't get me wrong, Empire was really bad 2 years ago, but they got a ridiculous they got a lot of point cuts across the board in the last balance update, which I think is great. I think Empire is in a good place, but if you look at Empire lists 2 years ago, those same lists are like 40 to 50 to 60 points more expensive than they were in some cases. So yeah, I don't think this is simply that you have a bunch of Blizzard Force lists that are bidding. I think like Empire stuff is cheap.
Yeah.
And I think they don't have that same perception that droids do or did, because they don't have a 38 point core unit, but it's more in the aggregate that sort of thing ends up than in just like one specific way to spam cheap activations. because spamming cheap activations is not like something that's inherently good anyway, which is why activations are averaging around 10 when you can make 15, 14 and 15 activation lists. Those lists are not good. So,
and you also just got the influx of the cheap bounty hunters, and Boba Fett's got a
right.
15-point decrease, and Bosk went down, and the IGs started 105 and 110.
Right.
And they do a lot of damage, and have a really high impact on the game, objective wise, trooper mulching wise, for not a lot of points.
Yeah, there's kind of a sweet spot of like 100-point character, roughly around 100-point characters for Empire. Like I want to run like 6 characters in an Empire list. I know that's not a thing, but like I want to run both IGs. I want to run Boba. I want to run Iden. Like I don't know.
Interest you in Imperial Assault?
No. I want to run them in Legion, Mike, because Legion is awesome.
That is the interesting thing. I a little off topic, but like wanting to run all those bounty hunters and not being able to right now, it's kind of a bummer. But
well, I also don't know that it would be effective to run like, because you could run 4 characters. You could run.
A lot of things aren't effective, Kyle, but they're fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff I do in my life that's not effective, but I had fun while I was doing it. So,
Yeah.
Usually ends up in my recycling bin.
Yeah.
Please don't give Empire like 3+ operative slots. I don't think we want to see that from a balance perspective.
I don't want to face triple bounty across the table that actually does something.
No, me either. All right.
You want to talk about the commanders then?
Yeah,
we're going to lead into that.
Let's hit some unit counts here.
Yeah, so these are going to be commander numbers, and you'll notice a theme at the top, and then I added in some little following points. But our most taken commander across all 198 lists was the Pike Capo, with 60 appearing across every faction. Seems fine.
Yep.
So remind us again how many players are.
All right, so we have 198
Invader.
players. So there's 198 individual lists, and there's a Pike Capo appearing 60 times.
So I'm sure some people are taking multiple Kappas, but I think you could say
So
that almost a third of players.
Pretty close to it. So they appear in 39 lists individually.
Okay.
And then in those 39 lists, there are 60 total units.
So almost a quarter of all players took a Pike Kappa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Regardless of faction.
Yep. I'm one of them.
I mean,
same.
it's it's the only Pikes. Excuse me. Pikes are the only unit that's
unprofessional.
After a weekend with 3 kids, losing my voice here. They're the only unit that every faction can take. So like, on the one hand, of course, you're going to see a lot of Kappas because every single faction can take them. On the other hand, they don't fulfill your commander requirement. So it's not like, you could argue, okay, there's 30-something Imperial officers and there's 30-something Rebel officers and there's 60 Kappas. So, if you go across 4 factions, that's still like less Kappos per list than, the officers occur in Empire lists or the Rebel officers occur in Rebel lists. But like the Imperial officer and the Rebel officer meet your minimums. The Capo doesn't. So like these 60, unless you're Shadow Collective, obviously, but like these 60 Capos are Capos that people are just taking as like an extra commander, not because they want a cheap commander, because you're not allowed to do that.
Right.
So
yeah, so we actually have the percentage for like the list of the other ones as well. So you alluded to the generic officers. The Imperial officer is second with 34 total, and the Rebel officer is third with 31.
Okay.
So the Imperial officer is in 30 lists total, which makes up 51% of Empire lists.
Yep.
And the Rebel officer is in 27 lists, which makes up 46% of Rebel lists. So that's it's almost double the rate of the Pike Capo that is actually appearing in its respective faction.
That makes sense to me. I mean, it's the generic commander.
You'll
they're not-
notice. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say they're not particularly amazing, but they're cheap, so they're fine for what they do. And especially, I think one of the reasons for this is just because of how popular these operatives are. Like you have to take a commander. So, and if you're running like 100 to 120, 130 point operative, then you're probably not going to be taking a premium costed commander. So,
Well, that depends what faction you're playing, because that's not necessarily true in Empire.
okay, go on.
So you'll notice that our top 3 units were all generic. So our top named unit in terms of like an actual Star Wars character that's not, made up is actually Iden, and there's 21 Idens. So Iden makes up 36% of all Empire lists.
I hate you so much, Kyle.
I
I blame you. I blame you for this completely.
There are more Idens than T series, which is kind of funny.
More items than what?
Than T series.
I mean, Iden's good. I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Beyond Iden, the next named character is Anakin with 14, and then surprisingly Han with 11. We've got a lot of Hans this season.
Yeah, that's interesting. The Anakin is not surprising because I don't think it would be a hot take to say that Anakin is the best, possibly. Like, I don't want to say he's the only good Republic commander, but I don't think it would be that far off the mark. So
I think Rex is still good. I think you just got to find ways to play him now. That's all.
That's why I'm not going quite that far. But the fact that you're seeing, I mean, what's the percentage on Anakin? Like,
So
what percent of Republic lists have Anakin?
The percent of Republic lists is 49%.
Okay, so more or equal to the number of Empire and Rebel lists that have a generic commander.
Yeah.
Have Anakin.
He's their generic commander.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Which, don't get me wrong, I love me some Anakin, but that's why that's a high number.
Yeah, there's more Anakin than clone commanders. There's only 12 clone commanders.
Yeah, because you're taking Anakin with a capo.
Yep.
I'm surprised there's 12 clone commanders and not 0.
So I think there's 12 because we do have 3 Yodas, 3 Codys, 3 chieftains, and 2 Obi-Wans, and 1 poor soul with Rex.
I could see it with Cody because Cody is just like begging to be fire supported, and you're getting some good value out of direct there. But I think for most of the other archetypes, the capo just gives you more or less what you want for 15 points cheaper. So
I don't disagree.
Okay. Especially for Anakin lists. If there's 14 Anakins, there should be at least 14 capos, because have we talked about how the ploy lets you basically ignore Anakin's flaw on this cast yet?
No.
So
we could hit it quickly.
Yeah, let's hit it super fast. Anakin's flaw, of course, is, if he has a suppression, you can't issue Anakin an order, which for a focus piece, like a force user, is like devastatingly bad. So most Anakin players would run endurance to try and strip suppression at the end of the turn, especially as he gets suppression from all of his command cards based on certain conditions. Ploy lets you put a face down order on your card, basically, and then play that whenever you want. So when someone plays the flaw card, they have to do it before command cards. So if someone plays the flaw on Anakin, you just play ploy and you put the commander token on the ploy card, and you have order control of Anakin, and you basically completely ignore the flaw. It's not like no downside, because then someone's essentially like, the flaw card essentially says you must play ploy, which can itself be an issue if you need to play something else at a given time. Yeah, it's such a great pairing for Anakin to run a capo with him with ploy, because then like endurance is 6 points in a training slot that you could easily be spending on any number of other great training upgrades for Anakin. So
yeah. Want to hit the operatives?
Sure.
So this is the exciting part that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So I guess, I don't know, this is a PG-13 cast, right? I'm not going to curse.
We curse occasionally.
Okay, I wasn't planning on
As long as you're not dropping any F-bombs.
No, not. It's not my content.
Okay.
So I got
drop whatever you want. I'll edit it.
I got really hammered the other night, and people were asking me questions about how many Bobas are here, how many Dins are here. So I opened up all 198 lists individually and counted how many Rebel Dins and how many Imperial Dins and Bobas, etc. there were. I have an exciting life, as you can tell. So we know that there are 37 Dins in this event. The site does categorize them all as, I think, Empire. So it doesn't actually split them up because we've got obviously some new tech that just needs updates.
Yeah, they're still working on the coding.
Yeah, it's beyond my knowledge. So we have 37 Dins total. There's only 11 Rebel, which means that there are 26 Imperial Dins, which is kind of surprising to me. I thought we would have a lot of Imperial Din like we do, but I thought we'd see more than 11 Rebel Dins considering we have nearly 60 lists. Just because he's new hotness, he's good, and Rebels have access to bounty now.
Yeah. I think for Rebels, my view as a Rebel player now, Mike, it's harder to fit him into stuff that makes sense with everything else you got going on. Like, he's good, and I think there's a place for him, but it's just a little bit tougher of a squeeze when you're trying to like do other things. That's just my view on it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and as someone that was thinking about this myself when I was building a list, I feel like with the way that, and I was possibly overthinking this based on how few Shadow Collective we saw, but with the way that people have been playing Maul in major tournaments recently from Shadow Collective, which is like hyper aggressive, in some cases like infiltrating him directly into a deployment zone, in other cases putting him into a bus, and just burying him as quickly as possible. Personally, I want to have a list that either has force push or whipcord. And if I'm not running force push, then that means you're running ripcord, which means you're running either Empire Boba or Rebel Boba. And between the two, for me, maybe it's just my comfort level. I would much rather have Empire Boba. I think Rebel Boba has a place as like an interesting linebacker unit, but that's not how I personally use Boba. So that's kind of like a basic, if I'm just straight up deciding between Empire and Rebels. If I'm not running a Force user, I would rather just run Empire. And then if I'm doing that, I'm running Boba. And then if I want to run Din, I'm doing like some Din Boba thing. So that's just like my own personal thought process, and why you might see more Empire Dins is simply because, like, for me, if I'm not running a Force user, I'm running Empire. It's that simple right now. Turns out I'm doing both at the moment because I'm running Vader and Blizzard Force. But like I was trying to make like Rebel lists with Din work, and I just couldn't find something that made me comfortable against like some kind of super aggressive Force user. And even though Din can himself dish out immobilized tokens, it's not the same because he doesn't have a way to disengage. It'll be interesting to see how he plays out, but like, immobilized in melee with the Force user, I don't think is where Din wants to be.
I don't think so.
I think he's great at like shredding normal schmoes. And people are already seeing this. He just absolutely shreds like core units and other just random trooper units. But you don't want him in melee with a lightsaber. And what makes Whipcord so good in that situation is Boba can slap him with the immobilized tokens and then just run away. And then you can shoot that Force user with whatever you want. You can shoot him with Boba. You can shoot him with the rest of your army. But there's, other than like some kind of last first withdrawal situation, the immobilized tokens from Din don't really do anything onto a Force user except like kind of commit you to just staying in combat with that Force user, and I'm not sure that's bad for the Force user. So that's a super long explanation, but that's why I think you're not seeing as much Rebel Din.
I don't disagree with any of your points. I was just surprised with the amount of hype that he's gotten both on Facebook and on Discord and on all the podcasts and such, talking about him with events. I thought we would just have more than 11, considering just the vast number of Rebels that we saw. I was expecting to see like 15 to 18. So to see, nearly half to 2/3 of that was a little surprising to me.
Yeah. Same number as Han,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair. We have 34 Imperial Bobas. To put that in perspective, that is 58% of Empire lists.
That's insane. That's crazy. I can't remember, other than maybe like Rex during Rex Star. I can't remember like a single unit making up such a huge percentage of the single faction's lists.
And like a focus piece unit, not just
Right.
like a core trooper or special forces,
Right. Yeah.
but like this is a focus commander / operative. And he's potentially getting gear upgrades with the new Boba as well.
Yeah, he's got 4 upgrade cards, they said.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's that people have sussed out, but that's what's listed on the box. But he's getting multiple gear upgrades in the same flavor as like, Gar Saxon or Din's gear upgrades. Like he might get like a discardable flamethrower. He doesn't need to use a card for it.
Now you can take two pips.
Right.
For the price of one.
Yeah. So he's only gonna get better. I mean, he's like, I used him at Nova with only, quote unquote, only his normal 3 command cards, and he's great. Now he's getting 3 more command cards, all of which are very solid, and potentially a bunch of gear upgrades. So I'm not
I
surprised.
still don't think he's as good as you think he is, Kyle.
It's okay to
I
be
think
wrong.
you're wrong. If Worlds was tomorrow, I would be running Boba Fett.
It would be pretty interesting to see if he won back-to-back Worlds, considering they were like 4 years apart.
That would be really funny, wouldn't it?
All right. Now I'm kind of in support of that happening just because of that ridiculousness.
Just for the walls, yeah.
Yeah.
I was pretty surprised as to what was third for operatives. So we actually have a tie, and it's another bounty hunter, but it's not the one that I thought it would be. It's Bosk and Padme at 17 apiece. Now I'm assuming we don't have the split numbers on Empire Bosk, CIS Bosk, and Shadow Collective Bosk, but that's a lot. 17. That's a fairly significant portion.
Yeah, Bosk is really good.
Yeah, he's super good.
Yeah.
And he's available with 3 factions, so that's not surprising.
Yeah. And I think in like all 3 of those, he has like, I was looking at a bunch of lists, like he has a really good place in all 3 of those. Like you can build entire lists to support him in every one of those factions, which is crazy.
I was surprised that we saw more Bosk than CAD, because CAD's been hyped up for the past 6 months as this really, really good new unit that got some changes that he needed, got some changes he didn't need, got a nice points cut. And all of a sudden the old bounty hunter is the one that's ahead of him, and they're available in the same number of factions.
I think it's, if I had to guess, I think CAD is a little trickier to play. And so people probably, if don't want to like, they want some more run time with them before they put them on the table, where Bosk is pretty straightforward. Just aim and shoot. That's what Bosk does.
He's just a spider droid.
He's way easier to use. Yeah. He's more fragile than a spider droid, so you gotta be a little more aware of his activation timing, but he's way easier to use than Cad Bane, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Anyone want to guess how many pikes we had for core units? Unless you've already looked at the sheet and then it's cheating.
I haven't. I never do my homework. 35, 37, no, 40. I'm going 40.
Like just 40 total pike core units across 200 players.
I don't know. I'm just saying things.
We have 148. They appear in 54 lists. So the pike soldiers appear in a quarter of every list, just over a quarter of every list.
But it seems like most likely always in whatever maximum quantity they're allowed.
Yeah.
I would wager that that's the case. And just based on my own experience of like looking at the list as we prep for the reveal show and looking at them as I scroll through all the others, you don't see just like a single pike. If it's Empire, it's like it's 2 pikes. If it's Rebels, it's 2 pikes. Shadow Collective obviously is different, so that probably skews a little bit. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
It's not our highest score though, because B1s are still a thing. And despite the fact that there's only 33 CIS lists, there are 184 B1s.
So that is, in some cases, I assume that's more than 6 B1s in a list because of the Battle Force.
I believe so. Let's throw that into a calculator. Oh, it is. Yeah, because it's 184.
There's almost 1 B1 unit for every player in Invader League.
Yeah.
It's 5.6 B1s per list.
Okay, so just under 6 B1s per list on average.
Because we do have a list that is 5 B2s, and it's the only 5 B2s in the event. So that I think that one has skewed it slightly.
What a mad lad. What are they doing?
I don't know, but I hope it has a snail.
Or 2 snails.
Or 2 snails. I don't know. You might not be able to afford all that.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. That would be a lot. That'd be like 800 points just with, and you'd only have like 7 activations. So that's probably not the case. Yeah, I don't know. Pikes are good. I don't know what else to say here.
Yeah, there's 100. So I mentioned I had the numbers for like how many capos were there and how many disruptors, etc. So of the 148 total pikes, 120 of them come with a disruptor. So these are not just naked filler. They're units that have a gun on them, and 79 of those have capos.
Can you tell how many are not Shadow Collective pikes?
Cannot, unfortunately.
Okay.
I attempted to count and gave up about 6 lists in, because I realized that I had to look through all of those one more time.
Yeah, and I don't think it's possible that I'm just not using this properly. It doesn't appear that there's a way to sort it yet based on mercenary units per faction. So Dr. Power Slam, I'm sure, will correct me after this cast.
Oh, yeah.
Be like, you dunce, there's a button up here that you can hit to but yeah, I'd be curious to see how many of those are like non-Shadow Collective pikes. Like how many lists are just straight up running 2 pikes because they can run 2 pikes.
Right.
I'm just glancing over the other ones here. None of these other ones are super surprising. Rebel Troopers with 80, Phase 1's at 78, everything else kind of in the 60s. That seems like sort of normal to me.
Yeah, and then it's down into the 30s for like the quote unquote specialized corps, like snows and fleets and things like that.
Yeah, B2s.
There's only 5 B2s, but
there's a total of 5 B2s.
There's total of 5
tournament?
B2s. Yeah.
Wow.
One player has all of the B2s.
How the mighty B2 has fallen.
I know. I miss those days.
I do too. I really enjoyed my B2s, but it's hard to justify, like a 95 point B2 HA.
Yeah.
When you can spend 80 points on a pike unit. Now, clearly that pike unit doesn't fulfill your minimums, but even still.
That's why you've got 184 B1s in the event.
Yeah.
We had 80 Rebel Troopers and 41 of them have the DLT. So, half filler, half actual gun units.
Yep.
Yeah.
Seems about right.
Rip Z6.
Yeah, it's gone.
Because it's a slot machine. Nobody wants to play slots.
It used to be good though. Like,
well, when it was the only thing you could choose. Yeah.
But it also just from a pure, there was a time in the game when the Z6 Rebel Trooper was the most efficient range 3 unit in the game.
Yeah, Granddad. It was like the first year.
I'm aware of that.
This is the new age.
Yeah.
I got my invite off of it.
Oh, there he is. Kyle lost Kyle there for a second. He's back.
Sorry, I'm good.
No, you're good.
I was just so shocked about how the mighty Rebel Trooper Z6 has fallen so far.
Yeah, I remember when we like ran those stats, right? About how but I mean they've always been a slot machine, right? And it's just like, sure, you throw 10 dice, but I don't know, it's white dice. So,
sometimes you get no hits, sometimes you get like 7.
Right.
Yeah.
And those 7 hits are like 4 crits, so everybody else is pissed.
Those are the best, like Rebel Trooper Z6 rolls, where you're just taking a shot in the dark, and you're like, oh, 4 crits. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, my loop just went 0 for 4. Oh crap.
Yeah.
I figured we could quickly hit the support and heavies because there's
Okay.
some really interesting discussions I think to be had about special forces.
Yeah, go ahead.
The heavies are exactly what you might think. AAT is tops, followed by the AA5, the T47, and then the Saber tank in third because the others are tied. We've got 19 AATs, 13 respective rebel heavies. They're effective pieces. They've got some good counter meta play, but they're definitely not the leading force they were, about a year and a half ago at the previous LSO.
Yeah.
I didn't really think there's any surprises there.
No, I think that's kind of a debate.
Thought I was seeing more ATSTs, but
I actually, that's a good point. There's less than 5 ATSTs, so that is a little surprising. The support's even more obvious. With Blizzard Force being good, we've got 47 speeder bikes, 32 barks, and 21 staps. So
Speeders are good.
It is weird to see 18 FDs to 11 DSDs. That was something that was kind of strange to read.
That's really
yeah.
funny.
If you told me a year ago that we had more FD cannons than spider droids, I would have laughed at you. But the special forces is really, really interesting. And I think it showed a lot of the growth and change that the game has had over the past 2 years. There's 101 rebel strikes, 85 imperial strikes, and then the third highest special forces is 18 Magna Guard. Like, this feels like it's early 2020 again. Like, if you're running special forces, they have to be sniper strike teams.
Well, and more specifically, Civil War era sniper strike teams. Yeah. Like, how many BX strikes and how many arc strikes?
There were 7 BX strikes, and there are 13 arc strikes.
Yeah, to me, I think this speaks more to the value currently of high velocity than strike teams, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I said it on a couple of weeks ago, but high velocity and Pierce have never gone out of fashion. We just forgot about them for a little while because there was other things to play with. But like, it's always been good. Like, this is nothing new. This has always been good. They're cheap. They don't care about cover for the most part, and then they kill it. They always wound. Like, yeah, good. It's good.
Yeah, they're in 70 and 65% of lists respectively.
Oh, and I wonder how much of that remaining is just straight up Blizzard Force, which is not allowed to take them.
That's a good question. There's only 5 rebel Wookiees, like melee Wookiees, which is just a crazy downturn from the last 2 leagues that we've seen.
Yep. I think that has everything to do with pikes.
Yeah, and that flows perfectly into our final section for the upgrades because we have 163 copies of SA, 141 copies of Vigilance. So, which is also even more slightly misleading because pikes have SA baked in. You don't even need to take the upgrade card, which you would take on it. So if you include pikes, SA, you have 303 copies of situational awareness in Invader League.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that doesn't even include the pike capos. That's just the pike core.
I feel like I should have just gone back to a high velocity spam list.
Yeah, I just kept mine.
Yeah. Dodge spam is real.
Yeah.
So where does that balance lead? Like, because I think one of the interesting things that Invader presents is that it gives us a worldwide view. And yes, there's the caveats of it's not the actual meta because we're using half spoiled units and round robin has a little more experimentation, but it still does give you a concept of what players in every region are still using. And how far into this tipping point of like dodge spam is what the game has become and you have to come up with a counter to it are we? Like, is it as simple as pikes are a little too cheap and then we can fix that? Or is it like, more of a core issue of it's just as easy for rebels to access? That's what they were doing before the pikes as well. Any thoughts on that?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think it is mostly pikes, simply because we've had, like, Rebels have had access to this archetype for more than a year.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, it was a strong list, clearly, but not in a way that, like, every tournament that you're going to, you're like, I need to deal with dodge spam.
Well,
certainly it was a consideration, but
yeah, I would argue I don't think it's just dodge spam that's forcing your hand on this. It's the dodge spam plus everything else that the pikes do, right? Like, it's the danger sense. It's like they got everything, man. And so it's like you're like, okay, I gotta do something. I gotta do something, And I think if maybe they lost one of those things or something got tweaked a little bit, then yeah, you would see the decline really, really fast. I think, because I don't think the dodge spam is the only thing that they have that is strong, right? They've got a lot that's strong. That's why there are so many of them, because they're just a really good cheap unit.
Yeah, sometimes you forget that they don't even have nimble because they just have so many of them.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, and I think it's possible that, like, if you were to do a points update, I think probably the Rebel Trooper version, like, people forget that actually went down in cost because the captains decreased. Personally, I would just undo that, put it back to the original captain cost. But like, I think that was probably slightly above the curve list before Pikes, and then Pikes just made it so that, like, everybody could do it in some fashion, even if it was just taking 2 of them. And I think Pikes are probably a little more efficient even than Rebel Troopers with captains for the cost. So yeah, I think it's the short answer is it was already kind of strong, not overly popular, but still very good. And then now everybody can do it. So
Yeah. And they are.
And they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Short answer, TLDR, I think it's Pikes, but I would not ignore the captains if I was looking at cost increases. Let's put it that way.
Do you think SA and Vigilance need to look for their points?
I think they're fine outside the context of those 2 builds. Like, I think, like, characters, Vigilance is fine at its cost on most characters. I think it's fine on, like, clone units that try and make dodge spam lists. I think Pikes don't even really need Vigilance, honestly. Yeah. I have not run Vigilance with Pikes. They already start the turn with dodges. Like, yeah, clearly you
It's
can lean into it more.
Yeah.
But my experience with Pikes and dodges has been like, 1 free dodge is great, 2 free dodges is good, 3 free dodges is overkill. Like, at 3 dodges, starting the turn with 3 dodges, and sometimes even 2, either they're going to be shooting you with something that has high velocity, or they're not. If they're not shooting you with something that has high velocity, then 2 dodges is going to be enough. If they are, then 1 dodge is going to be too many, so
but Kyle, 3 is more than 2, and that's better.
With aim tokens.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So here's a weird question. So instead of like a points adjustment, could you just remove one of the keywords like outmaneuver or dangerous sense from Pikes and even them out? I think that could do it, right?
Potentially.
I think that's very likely.
I'm not sure which one you would remove. If you remove independent, it makes, like, none of the other things that they do work. I think that's arguably similar with if you remove outmaneuver, because then you just get back to crit spam as a counter, and I'm not sure that's, that might be like sort of replacing one bad thing with another. Maybe it's dangerous sense, but dangerous sense is kind of a slot machine. Personally, I would just increase the price. I think there's a danger of overthinking it there. Because I think if you're cutting a keyword, there's a bigger chance that you, like, hit the wrong button, so to speak. Whereas if you're just increasing their cost, you just they're just too efficient. So if you increase their cost, then you're addressing the problem more directly. Thematically, it's a little weird that like, these street thugs are apparently like hyper elite units, but I don't know. I think there's a danger, like if you were to remove any of those keywords, you kind of break something else about how they work. I don't know.
I guess
You want to avoid the
thematically,
arc
though,
trooper problem.
yeah. If we're talking about thematically, I think, spoiler alert for Book of Boba Fett, like I don't, they weren't as much of street thugs as they were more of a oiled machine, right? And I think that it's a little reflective of it.
But look at what they were fighting against. They were fighting
Street
against
thugs.
Boba, Din, and like actual like teenagers on mopeds, right? Like of course they're gonna look organized and effective
fair.
compared to
That's fair.
like the dude that spins around and with his eye thing and
Yeah.
a bunch of like speed 1 mopeds.
I have seen this. Yes.
Yeah. But you look at Pikes and other media like Clone Wars, and they're not comparable to clone troopers.
Mm.
So but they're
Okay.
in this game they're better than clone troopers. So yeah, I don't know. From a balance perspective, I think the easiest knob to turn would just be a points knob.
It's a weird way to phrase that, but all right.
It's probably pretty accurate.
Phrasing not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
We're just not doing phrasing anymore. Yeah.
Just need to add serpentine as a new upgrade.
Serpentine
Gives you like agile 1.
Yeah. I'm speaking of real quickly, I am glad that they leaned into the memes a little bit with some of these new card names, like the hand thing. They literally just named a card thing, the quote hand thing. I think that's amazing. I love that.
And the artwork has been absolutely killer. Like all
It
of these
has
new
been.
command cards are just stunning.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, there's
that part.
You know what? There's a positive thing for AMG. They've really been focused on the art. The sculpts have been for the most part pretty amazing as well. And you know what? You're doing great, guys. In the art department. The art department's doing great.
And you know who came over from FFG? The sculptors in the art department.
Did they?
Yeah, they kept the sculptors.
Well, that was my, what was that first mini extravaganza where they were talking about the Shadow Collective, and they did like an hour and a half on like all the art and like finding the artists and like doing it, and I was like, this is great. Like I love that.
There's a lot of work that goes into that stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
So I mean, yeah, seriously, that stuff is all great, and that's something they do great with MCP too. So that's not surprising.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, every MCP model I see, even though I don't play the game, I'm like, I want to buy that.
Yeah.
And just put it on my shelf. But,
and I guess shameless plug for those artists. You can actually find out who they are, and most of them do have like a Patreon where they'll like sell the artworks and stuff. There's a few other games that I subscribe to their artworks, and it usually makes up like my desktop backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah.
So if you really do like it, you can purchase it, put it on your wall and stuff.
Yeah.
Jay can probably attest. It's not always a whole lot of money in graphic design. So
no.
That kind of wraps up my my points for Invader League. I appreciate you guys having me on here to kind of display the numbers and just chat about some of the things and the overarching themes and what we're expecting.
Where can people follow Invader League if they want to do that?
So easiest place to follow Invader League is to go to the Legion Discord. The admins over there have given me full access over like all of the channels. And we have somewhere between 6 to 10 channels that has like just our general chat where you can ask questions. There's some rules questions, announcements. You can see pictures of the maps. Actually, that's a lie. I took that down. You can check the streaming schedule for all of our Twitch and YouTube streams. And you can also go to invaderleague.com. Simple as that. Just go to the website there. You'll be able to see what is Invader League. You'll be able to navigate over to the groups and kind of see where all the live standings are and who's playing what. And every now and then there's a post on Facebook about it. I'll admit I'm not very good about keeping that up to date, but if you just search in the Legion Discord group, Invader League, it'll come up with my name and kind of get all that info as well.
Yeah, make sure you check out the streams because that's how we support this stuff. So
yeah, we're trying to push some things to get some bigger stream audiences this year. We've got some more giveaways. We're going to do weekly giveaways for those that like check in the streams. So if we just like see you in the chat, you get an extra entry into the weekly things. And you guys have been nice enough to sponsor like half of the weekly giveaways. So we appreciate it. I think the first one actually went live while we were recording here. It's for a Sabak chit set from Luminous Gaming.
Nice.
So if you go over to the channels that I just mentioned, there's the giveaway channel, and you just click on the little button at the bottom and you get entered into it. We'll do the giveaway in a week. It's the easiest place. Legion Discord's the easiest one. We're fairly close to the top, and I'm always in there making fun of somebody with the Invader League tag after my name, so it's easy to find.
Yeah, and if you're not in the Invader League Discord, I will put, or I'm sorry, the Legion Discord, I will put the link in the description of this. Make that easier.
awesome.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, we are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Jay.
You can say I'm Mike.
Oh,
it's okay.
and I'm Mike.
I would have let the silence just roll. I just wanted to see how long we could wait.
Yeah,
I would have waited for a while. It's been a couple of years since I could say I was part of that.
yeah. The guests say that they're here too. It's okay. We're not.
You're scoundrel this week, buddy.
Oh,
Yep.
sweet. My face is very red, as you on YouTube can see now.
All right. Stay fresh, cheese bags.
Later.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.